All right, folks, we're going to get started for the afternoon or the second half of the morning. And next up, we have Ellen Bowski from the University of Georgia.
It's just the green button. Just the green button. Hi, I'm Ellen Bowski. I am the program coordinator for the Georgia Center for Urban Agriculture. Let's see, that better? I'm the program coordinator for the Georgia Center for Urban Agriculture, and I'm in the Department of Plant Pathology. I coordinate programs in local food, urban forestry, urban water issues, and professional training for the landscape industry. I'm also co-vice chair of the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture. I'm going to address the two questions that were posed for the day. What is my top priority in food and agricultural research, extension, or education that I think NIFA should address? Well, that's easy. I think it's consumer horticulture. Consumer horticulture is the cultivation, use, and enjoyment of plants, gardens, and landscapes and related horticultural items for the benefit of individuals, communities, and the environment. In a nutshell, it's gardening and landscaping. Consumer horticulture has a huge number of stakeholders, and they're very diverse. They're community gardeners, home gardeners, homeowner associations engaged in consumer horticulture, public gardeners, nonprofits, municipalities with their parks and recs departments, schools with their sports fields, hospitals. The list is almost endless. Who gardens? Well, according to Bruce Butterfield of the National Garden Association, just about everybody. 80% of all households have a member who gardens inside or outside. And that's a huge number of consumers. There are also a very diverse group of industry stakeholders in consumer horticulture. These are businesses that meet the needs of gardeners either by purchasing plants or supporting their use. They include nurseries, greenhouses, turf grass producers, landscape design, construction, and maintenance firms, wholesale and retail distribution firms such as garden centers, home stores, and mass merchandisers with lawn and garden departments. The list goes on and on. Irrigation specialists, floricultures, etc. Okay, let's go back here. Consumer horticulture and specialty crops go hand in hand. Consumer horticulture ultimately drives the demand, consumption, and sale of many specialty crops. That would be ornamental trees, shrubs, turf grass, annuals, and perennials, as well as vegetables for the home garden market. Consumer horticulture is a significant driver of the agricultural economy. The consumer hort sector contributes more than $196 billion to the U.S. economy annually. The Specialty Crop Research Initiative has had a huge impact on the production of consumer hort crops. Of the 162 projects that were funded between 2008 and 2015, 162 of them focused on production of specialty crops. But the SCRI has had less of an impact on the use of specialty crops, particularly in consumer horticulture. We know that landscapes have social, environmental, financial, health, and well-being impacts. And we also know that lawns cover a huge area in the United States. NASA estimated it as an area the size of Texas. That's 164,000 square kilometers in turf grass. And turf grass does not come alone. It is accompanied by trees, shrubs, annuals, and perennials. So consumer hort crops are having a huge impact on the way we live. And that brings me to the second question. What is the most promising scientific opportunities for the advancement of food and agriculture and science? I'm going to be kind of a one-note wonder. Once again, consumer horticulture. We know that consumer horticulture is an essential component of human life. And there are many things we should be exploring. We need to explore the social health and well-being benefits associated with gardening and landscaping. It's time to develop and promote sustainable practices specific to consumer horticulture. It is essential to educate practitioners on appropriate use of production and management techniques. We need to define the plants, products, and technologies that are appropriate to the diversity of landscapes and regional climates across the United States. We can also help specialty crop producers identify consumers and new markets. It's time to elucidate the role of landscapes in sustaining pollinator populations and maintaining water quality and quantity. We need to identify the right green infrastructure for cities, consumers, and wildlife. And there's some real sticky things we have to grapple with, and that is it's time to proactively address the importation, introduction, and spread of invasive species. All of these research initiatives need a very strong extension outreach component to reach the many consumers in consumer horticulture. I mentioned earlier that I was a member of the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture. This is an initiative founded by academicians, business people, and members of nonprofits who share a common vision, that is to cultivate a healthy world through the use of plants, gardens, and landscapes. The Economic Committee pulled together this infographic. It's essentially a roadmap for people who are unaware of the human value of consumer horticulture, and it illustrates how human consumer horticulture impacts where we live, where we shop, where we play, and where we work. If you'd like to find out more about this infographic and the Initiative for Consumer Horticulture, please visit our website. It is consumerhort.org. And with that, I'd like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for a very interesting talk, and I'm learning a lot. I'd like to kind of learn more about what putting the word consumer in front of horticulture, what does that enhance in horticulture itself?
Well, it separates it from production. You know, our background is always growing more, but consumer horticulture really is the part of horticulture that is drawn by the end user, that person who walks into Lowe's and buys a plant, takes it home, wants to put it in their yard. So that's what the consumer horticulture is. It's from the consumer's perspective, the consumer of horticultural products perspective, rather than the producer's perspective. Okay, thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Harry Dickerson from the University of Georgia College of Veterinary Medicine.
Good morning. Good late morning. My name is Harry Dickerson, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Affairs at the University of Georgia College of Veterinary Medicine. I'm also the director of the UGA Veterinary Medical Experiment Station, and I'm making this presentation on behalf of the Council of Research for the American Veterinary Medical Association. The AVMA has a membership of just over 89,000 veterinarians, which is approximately 82% of the veterinary medical professionals in the United States, most of which who would probably fit in the football stadium over in Athens. Research that, for the first question, and I apologize, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but and I've got a script here I'm going to read through most of, but I want to stay pretty much on script because I've got quite a few things I want to cover. Research that broadly improves animal health is the top priority of the AVMA for the advancement of food animal agriculture. This includes research for the identification of new technologies to diagnose, treat, and prevent infectious diseases of agricultural animals, as well as pharmacologic and non-pharmacologic management practices to benefit animal health and well-being. The end goal is to provide a safe, healthy, and abundant animal source of food and fiber. Of primary importance is the need for continued and increased research focused on the health of livestock, poultry, and aquaculture. Control of endemic diseases and the threat of transboundary animal diseases is critical. Research should target the development of new diagnostic assays for the earlier recognition of pathogens, as well as new vaccine strategies to control the transmission of pathogens from animal to animal and/or to people. Efficient food production, as well as the welfare of individual animals, is optimized by good animal health. Management practices to promote animal health should be investigated with a special emphasis on the effect of nutrition, on prevention of disease, correction of physiological imbalances, and efficient energy use. Research into other management practices, including sanitation and hygiene conditions, can lead to a reduction in exposure of humans to animal pathogens. The American Veterinary Medical Association believes that the use of data-driven methods to elucidate how changes in prophylactic and therapeutic management practices influence animal health and productivity is the most promising opportunity for advancement of animal health and ultimately human health, and is critically necessary to make informed decisions going forward. A specific example is innovation in data-driven methods that would allow monitoring of antimicrobial resistance in field situations, and how changes in management practices related to antimicrobial use ultimately influences animal and human health. It is important that changes of policy and practice are based upon strong scientific evidence before implementation. The AVMA advocates for research to explore ways that promote increased animal production at decreased cost while protecting and enhancing animal welfare and minimizing environmental impacts. This includes, but is not limited to, research on the effect of subclinical illnesses on both food and growth efficiency and foodborne illnesses, research to improve diagnostic capabilities to detect subclinical disease and improve disease containment, research on gene expression designed to improve efficient animal production and health. Also, research to determine the impact of production practices on animal health, animal welfare, and the environment. Also known as the One Health concept that veterinary medicine is very much strongly bought into. Finally, based on my own professional and personal experience as an academic veterinarian and a USDA-funded animal health researcher, I believe strongly that the NIFA foundational research and exploratory programs are key elements of the USDA competitive grants program supporting animal health. I believe that using funds to support investigator-initiated research targeting basic principles of physiology and biology and pathobiology can often be more effective in the long run than mandating research funds for specific diseases. I'd also like to mention that these funds have been instrumental in the development of the careers of young veterinary researchers across the country for many years. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit more on what role do you see NIFA playing in transboundary type diseases?
Yeah, I think transboundary diseases are a critical threat to our whole economics animal production system. For instance, the effects are multiple. If a outbreak of foot and mouth disease, for instance, came into my state of Georgia, it would have an effect not only on cattle in that state, but it would shut down everything. And we have a huge poultry production system, industry, that would all be affected. So NIFA can do many aspects of it. We do a lot of research on biocontainment research for facilities within which, not necessarily foot and mouth, that's limited to a specific area, but other select agent type organisms, funding for those types of research, funding for support of such facilities, and also training of individuals in the diagnostics of transboundary diseases, and also, as I mentioned, the development of vaccines. A lot of areas. I could get very granular on that, but yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, we have Antonio Quinlan from the Hudson River Apiary Society. I'm not sure if Mr. Quinlan was able to make it this morning. Okay. Well, then we will proceed to the next speaker on our agenda. That is Thomas Kuhn from Oklahoma State University. Okay, I have a joke. While he's walking up, what is the scarecrow's favorite fruit? Strawberries.
Yeah, that was better than the runway music, so I appreciate the attempt anyway. Thank you. I appreciate, again, echo some of the other presenters' comments about the great appreciation we have for the agency asking for input and the own self-reflection that you've gone through as well. I really appreciate that. I think it's certainly meant to improve our ability to support food and agriculture, natural resource systems in the country, and that's our intention as well. I'm Tom Kuhn. I serve as Vice President for Agricultural Programs at Oklahoma State University. I could have gone 5 hours away to Kansas City last week, but I had a conflict, and so I flew 5 hours away instead of driving it to speak here today. But it is important to me. I do want to say I'd like to switch the order of the questions, if that's okay, because I see the second question really as being more of a framing question about the context in which we identify and pursue our research, extension, and teaching priorities. And so I want to talk about that framing a little bit more. The actual priorities I'll get to, I think, are more a reflection of our particular geography, Oklahoma being in the southern Great Plains and having that transition from southeastern forests to those plains. So it'll be more specific as I get to those priorities. I think the most promising opportunities are in the integration of research, the integration of scientific research and translation of that research through formal and non-formal educational programs that address the full scope of the value chain. There are critical needs for better understanding of soil and water sciences that affect crop and animal production systems. There are critical needs for better understanding of post-harvest storage, processing, and distribution challenges in the supply chain of food and other agriculture and natural resource products and services. There are critical needs for better understanding of markets in the current global climate and regulatory environment. There are critical needs for better understanding of human nutritional needs and their relationship to human health management. There are critical needs for better understanding of farmer, rancher, agribusiness operator, wholesaler, retailer, and consumer behavior. The most critical need is for research and translation that is conducted within this system's perspective. Ultimately, this reflects the complex environment in which players in the food, agriculture, natural resource systems operate. And even the most reductionist research into soil chemistry, plant physiology, animal genetics, foodborne pathogens, all of those need to be framed by these systems perspectives of being part of the whole supply chain, value chain from production to consumption. It's in the integration of these concepts that we have the greatest opportunities for discoveries and applications that can enhance profitability, environmental health, and human health. In addition, I'd like to mention a little bit about infrastructure, because that's typically not part of the normal NIFA grants program. But I think it's important to recognize the unique role that NIFA and the land-grant universities and the non-land grant schools of agriculture and natural resources play in strengthening our food production systems. It isn't sufficient to simply fund individual research and extension projects, no matter how extensive or collaborative or integrative they may be. Ultimately, sound research that advances our food security and ecosystem sustainability relies on complex and expensive research and demonstration facilities. Whether they are biosafety level laboratories that allow investigations into pathogens, or sophisticated tissue culture and genetic analysis facilities, or modern animal production and crop production facilities where we can experiment with the factors that influence animal and crop health and productivity, our public research infrastructure is the foundation of our ability to advance agriculture, food production, natural resource management, and community vitality. 2 years ago, the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities contracted with a private firm to conduct a study into the status of research infrastructure at public schools of agriculture. That study documented a deteriorating infrastructure for the research that has provided for many of the advances in our understanding of agricultural productivity and security. Those advances that undergird some of the statistics that we saw earlier about how inexpensive food is relative to health care, the advances that we've made in food and food safety and so on. That study documented a deteriorating infrastructure for the research that we've talked about. In fact, those very advances that we talked about were conducted in facilities that were considered state-of-the-art at the time that that work was going on. The unfortunate fact is that for many of our public institutions, we are still using those same facilities to support our research, and they are no longer state-of-the-art. Indeed, the study documented a deferred maintenance debt of $8.4 billion. However, that's not simply a reflection of poor facility management. Nearly 2/3 of the usable space that was inventoried was built before 1990, and much of that was built before 1970. Those facilities simply cannot support the kind of electronics, environmental safety, and environmental control needs of 21st century research. Certainly, there is room for improvement in the investments that institutions make into maintenance of their facilities, and we've called ourselves to task for that. However, there are two considerations relevant to the research priorities question that you raise. For other agencies, the full cost of research, that is, the combination of direct costs for materials, equipment, and personnel, and indirect costs, the real costs of facilities maintenance and operations and administrative oversight and support, are fully paid by the grants from federal funding agencies. For USDA grants, that is not the case. We are paid lower than the actual cost of the indirect costs. I realize it's not the prerogative of the agency to change that. It'll require changes in legislation. But if we want to ensure good stewardship of the facilities that support agricultural and natural resource research, we need to ensure that the full costs of research are covered by the grants that are awarded. In other words, the federally negotiated rate for facilities and administration needs to be authorized for USDA competitive grants. The fact that so much of the research infrastructure is outdated means there is a need for new investments in that research infrastructure. I don't mean to suggest that this is strictly a federal role. However, given the national interest in safe, secure, and sustainable food and fiber supplies, there is certainly a role for the federal partner to play to assist in financing the kind of infrastructure improvement that is needed. APLU has developed a proposal that would add funding for research infrastructure that is fair, competitive, and requires non-federal match. In fact, the authorization for the agency to do this already exists in the Research Facilities Act. What is needed is new funding in order to support the federal partners' investment that will leverage state and private investments so that our research infrastructure can support the demands of 21st century research at public agricultural schools. As for the top priorities in food and agricultural research, I'll provide more detailed comments in the written, but very simply, I think there are a couple of areas that we've already heard about today: plant breeding and genetics. I think there's a role for public institutions to play, especially in those crops that are not in the domain of the large agribusiness enterprises in the world. Specialty crops, we've heard about those today. Organic, we've heard about that today. I think the land-grant universities still have a really important role to play in fostering advances in plant breeding and genetics, using modern genetic techniques as well as conventional breeding practices to develop varieties that might be resistant to whiteflies, for example, without the need of all of those heavy pesticides that Dean Perdue was talking about. I think soil ecosystems is another area. There's a lot of interest, and it's really been heartening to see the kind of interest that people have around the whole soil health movement. However, we need to make sure that we've got really good science undergirding that movement so that we're using the right materials, the right methods, the right plant materials in particular as we try to strengthen the health of our soil systems. Animal health management, we heard about that already. I'm concerned that we need to avoid simply depending on pharmaceutical firms to come up with silver bullets. Rather, we really need to look at management practices and understand the herd health approach to managing animal health in our livestock systems. I think finally it's important to recognize the importance of community engagement in developing secure and sustainable food systems. We're fortunate that consumers and community leaders are interested today. We need to take advantage of that. What concerns me is that when people come to us and say, can you help us with a community food project, we don't have a whole lot of research to fall back on. And so I think there's a need for advancing research in that. Again, an integrated approach that involves horticultural practices as well as community organizing, as well as innovative approaches to markets, small markets, microloan programs, and so on. There's more need for research there for us to be able to provide the kind of information that's needed. Let me close with just an illustration from Oklahoma that's unique to Oklahoma. The Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma is very much engaged in its own food sovereignty, and it's been an honor to be able to work with them side by side as they pursue their own agricultural enterprises, both for economic returns and for cultural returns. And in talking with the leaders of their agriculture department, I learned something by hearing them talk about the return on investment that their beef and pecan production systems are meant to provide, jobs for community members and economic activity that spins off other opportunities. But they also talk about a return on vision. They talk about how their agricultural enterprises, their natural resource systems are meant to return on the vision of their culture, of their society. I think we all have something to learn from that. And whether there's a researchable question in there or not, I'll leave that to social scientists to come up with that. But I think there's something for us to recognize by looking at the broader systems and think about the community context for how people obtain their food, how they use their food, and how it maintains their health. That can help us to have stronger and more sustainable food systems in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tom?
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Very, very, very enlightening comments. If I could ask you to sort of expand on how do you think we can enhance our partnership with tribal colleges? And you gave a great example of one effort in Oklahoma, but across our land grant system enterprise that also includes our tribal colleges, how can we expand our partnership in terms of collaboration on programs, systems approach-based programs, and be a little more inclusive so that we build capacity in that portfolio as well?
Well, thanks for that question, Dr. Qureshi. I think part of it is our own self education and learning and greater awareness of what the unique needs are within each of those communities. For one thing, our native communities are extremely diverse, and I mean, that's really struck me since I came to Oklahoma. We have 39 federally recognized tribes there, and their cultural heritage goes back to, you know, many different linguistic patterns and so on. So understanding that there isn't one solution, I guess, is the point, but rather it takes continued engagement with communities to understand the needs and then to participate with them. But the thing I found is that across that diversity, there's a sort of a basic understanding or agreement with the value of what we do in cooperative extension. In other words, having people embedded in the community who are part of the community and can understand and engage with leaders and members to understand what those needs are. I think that's really a critical part. And now it doesn't have to be an embedded extension agent like the federally recognized tribe extension program, although that's one way. But there are other ways that we can facilitate that kind of embeddedness and then engage in conversation with them. But I think it's on us, it's on the land-grant institutions to foster that kind of engagement and certainly be a conduit and a partner with NIFA in better understanding those. Dr. Ramaswamy did a phenomenal thing last year when he called us together, and it was specifically in talking about engaging between 1862 and 1994 land-grant institutions. No one had ever done that. And it was an extremely rich conversation. I learned a lot, and I was overwhelmed at the same time. But so there are a lot of things that we can be doing. And to be honest with you, it's more likely to happen at the grassroots, at the community level, than it is with something that happens in Washington on the waterfront. And so I applaud Dr. Ramaswamy's leadership for calling us together, and I look forward to continuing that dialogue, not only around tribal colleges, but also in other ways of involving communities, tribal communities in the work that we do. Thank you.
All right, we are moving on. Next up, we have Joyce Perdue from Hickson High School.
Good morning. My name is Joyce Perdue, and I'm from Hickson High School in Hickson, Tennessee. Today I have some staff members that are with us, some faculty members I'd like to introduce, and I've asked to introduce them. It's Mr. Lee Friedlander. He is our agri-science teacher. Thank you, Megan. Renee Parker, she's our health science teacher, and Jill Moses, our business teacher. These three folks represent our faculty and staff, which are excellent teachers, motivators of students in our school. They're just three of the many teachers who work hard every day. Let me tell you just a little bit about Hickson High School. Someone asked me this morning if we were a charter or magnet school. I said, no, we are a public school in the community of Hickson. We are one of 17 high schools in our district. And I do have to say that we have the only ag program in the district of 44,000 students and employees. So it's a great thing to have at our school, and we appreciate all of the CTE programs that we have in our school. Also, our school is very diverse. We have many programs at our school that we enjoy, and as our principal likes to say, Mr. Sims, he likes to say, we all get along, and we get along well. So if you're ever in the Hickson community, please come see us. But today, we want to talk about some of the promising opportunities and top priorities. And listening to all the different things that you've said today just reinforces what we believe as high school teachers, that here's the gap that's missing. Here's the piece that has not been tapped yet. In 2014, Millennial Branding put out a study about high school careers, and it was mainly about internships. And when we read that, we jumped right on the bandwagon and started an internship program. And our goal is every senior in our high school will have that opportunity of an internship or work-based learning opportunity. And we're at about 159 a year that happen in our school. But one of the things that struck me in this study was that parents expect students in high school now to be able to know what they're going to do with their life when they leave high school, but they're not helping them. And I thought that just struck me as very an interesting fact that we as high school teachers have even a bigger responsibility to our students. We took a survey in our school before we started to revamp what we're doing, and one of the questions was, what can we do? What other classes could we have for you that would change your high school career or help you? And a student wrote, it was anonymous, but a student wrote, teach us how to live life after high school. Just teach us that, because most of them are on their own, even before high school, but for sure when they graduate. I'm proud to say that over the past few years, we've had some changes and things are going fantastic. 80% of our students who graduated this year went on to higher education, 5% into the military or other areas like that. So we feel that what we're doing is working at Hickson High School. And of course, it's relationships and capturing students early. So what does that have to do with NIFA? And for all of you that are here, high schools, like I said, this is the time to capture them, to bring them in, to get them interested in what you want them to know. So, we believe one of our foundational beliefs and moving forward is research, design, and innovation should be happening in our public schools. We shouldn't be waiting until they get to college. That shouldn't be the first time they ever walk in and have to do research or look at a lab that has $1 million pieces of equipment in it. We should see this in our high schools. Our schools should be incubators and creative hubs of design thinking and problem solving, innovation, scientific research, where we have thinkers and we actually produce prototypes and publishable research is produced. What's going on right now in Hickson, just some things to make you aware, is, and this is Mr. Friedlander in his agri-science class with 10th and 11th graders. You know, and of course, yes, it is. You have to teach them the research process, how to cite a publication. You work through all those things, but they're doing real world work. 10th and 11th grade students tested the efficacy of grafting these heirloom tomato cultivators to highly vigorous F1 hybrid rootstock cultivators. The students' research of existing literature, and yes, in a science class, they were told that they had to go to library and they were working on previous literature reviews and writing a review. That is happening. They grafted tomatoes. They wanted to know about the production benefits of grafted tomatoes in a high tunnel. Okay, so they developed the research question and they extended it to previous research to determine if the grafting also had benefits in tomatoes grown in a hydroponic system. We do have a hydroponic system at Hickson High School. We have 2 facilities that were funded by grants and are in production. With one has hydroponics and one is soil. With the help of their teacher, they developed a double-blind protocol to remove experimental bias during the data collection phase of the experiment. This is a great experiment, but how much further could it have been pushed if we had an active partner in a university with us? And I know NIFA has some of those things, but I guess we're asking that active partnerships are easier to find and to access and to come alongside. High school students, like Mr. Friedlander said, we have free labor. Okay, they're with us 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and we love that. But we put them to good use. Another thing that's happening in our school is some of our other 11th grade chem students. Since we have the hydroponic system, they develop nutrient formulations for targeted crops, which they will mix with recipes of ionic salts to meet the nutritional needs of these hydroponic crops. And then they're going to test the performance of those. Again, how interesting it would be if we had someone else working with us and helping us write this up, working with the students. So I guess that what I want to say is, I'm getting down to my minutes, promising opportunities would be that we have research-based activities going on in our high schools and to tap into those research-based activities. Also, introducing them to your different pathways. You need people to come into colleges. We can do that in high school. We can make them aware of the different possibilities in our high school classes. Students entering your universities no longer have to take a year to decide what they want to do. They can come right in and they can start working. Also, we'd like to see a model created with working with NIFA of how this would work in a high school if it came along and we went ahead and created a model of active partnerships. Ones that could help us with experimental design, partnerships of knowledge and expertise, linking our activities that we are already doing even further into the real world, giving relevance to classroom activities, creating connections with what comes next in the student's future, and then funds. For instance, if there's someone in Hawaii that's doing research and it fits with what we're doing, or vice versa, we might just have to have distance learning equipment, and that professor then could be in our classroom at that time when we are working with them. So those are some things that an active partnership could help. So that's another promising opportunity. You could also create a database that would be easier accessed if a teacher in high school were getting ready to do a project. They could look at what was happening in the universities and maybe click and be able to instantly see who is working on the same things. We ask that you help us push science by taking a more active role in high schools and by providing the structure and funding to create those active partnerships. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Are there any questions?
Questions? Okay.
Oh, there's one back.
Yes, sir.
I think that's just phenomenal and wonderful what you're presenting. I think that's a real, it makes me feel great for our future that you are
Yes.
doing such a thing. I'd just like to, one example, I have a colleague at University of Georgia who, when he was at the University of Alabama in Birmingham, he had a program that was sponsored by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. And that program actually trained the teachers to train the students. So it was actually, they brought them in for summer programs into the labs at the university, gave them the equipment to do, in this case, it was biomedical and it was molecular biology type things. But they would train these high school teachers, which would get a great amount of enthusiasm to them. Then they would go back into the classroom with the equipment that they got in their training, and was able to bring that excitement into the classroom. And it also made that partnership connection very strong. So I think that sort of model has worked, and I think it'd be something to consider. And it would be a possibility for NIFA to actually perhaps fund something for that in
Right.
the agricultural science side.
And I think so. It would be a wonderful network. If you energize teachers,
Yeah.
they change the world.
I think we all know that. I think,
Yes.
I think every one of us here knows that inherently, that we probably are on our
Yes.
career course because of some high school teacher that
Yes.
did that for us.
And I do agree with the model, if you train the teacher and give them equipment and
Yes.
excite them and they get back into the classroom, and then stand beside them as you go along,
Yeah.
is a great model, not
Yeah.
just leaving them alone.
Yes.
Thank you.
This is actually directed to Dr. Qureshi. Does the REEU program support this kind of model that she's talking about?
So, REEU is an four-year college level. However, and I'm so glad you asked that question. But first, before I answer that question, let's give a big hand to the high school teachers who are here, because there's tremendous data available which tell us that if you wait till master's and PhD level to attract people towards agriculture program, it's already too late. Even if you wait till high school, you're still too late. You need to start very, very early. There are more jobs, folks, in agriculture than the graduates we produce. So there's no question the relevance of this talk to NIFA's mission overall. Answer to your question, there are several programs in NIFA's education and workforce development portfolio which are actually geared to exactly what she was saying in her slide: curricula development, professional development of teachers, partnership with two-year colleges, four-year colleges, articulation programs between high school and two-year and four-year colleges. So these partnership ideas which she has, they are already in works in some of NIFA's programs, but more so, I think we need to do a better job at my level to sort of promote the opportunities which we currently have, and also use some model partnerships which are currently working so that they can be amplified or replicated. I'll give you one example. We funded a project at North Carolina State University a few years ago where, and I'm forgetting the high school name, where NC State developed, it's on the coastline. That partnership actually resulted in developing a biotechnology lab in high school.
Bertie Early College High School.
There you go. What was the name again?
Bertie Early College High School.
Bertie Early College High School. In fact, I was so impressed that those students are actually cloning genes, transforming bacteria, expressing those genes in transformed bacteria, developing those, purifying proteins which are being expressed by those bacteria, and actually they have established a business that expressed protein is now being sold back to NC State. What a great model for us to actually replicate. But you are absolutely right. We need to do a better job in NIFA to actually promote these type of activities, because no question that if we don't start at her level or even lower level, we will miss the boat. So again, my thanks to high school teachers. You made our day by coming here, so thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
I have a question. How do you see these activities being incorporated into programs? Do you see them as being part of your standard curriculum, or added to the standard curriculum, or done after the standard curriculum? What's effective?
Can I choose D, all the above?
Okay, thank you. That's a great answer.
No, but truly, part of the curriculum is the integration portion. We also have an amazing fine arts program. I mean, we have a orchestra and a band, 90 strong in each one. So it adds to the creativity of what our students do in the school. So you could have ag business. We have our health science program who produces CNA students when they leave, and personal trainers by the time they leave our school. They also put projects into their classrooms of how can we do this surgery better. They're out asking butchers to get pigs or tendons, so they could actually show a new tool on how to do this surgery. So we have all those things are incorporated into the classroom. Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Joyce. Next up, we have J. Russell Washington. Are you here today? All right, I don't think he was able to make it. So, our last scheduled speaker is Michael Newman from Mississippi State University. And if you have an interest and you're not on the schedule to speak after Mr. Newman, can you just raise your hand? All right, well, we'll give you another chance after our final scheduled speaker here. Just use the green button to advance yourself.
Thank you, Megan. It's been my pleasure to hear from colleagues at the University of Georgia this morning, but I'm a bulldog of the maroon variety. Glad to be here. I'm the director of the School of Human Sciences there, which also contains our program in agricultural education, leadership, and communications. So I really appreciate the work at Hickson High School. I have to say, I'm concerned we have a school district with 44,000 students and only one high school has agriculture, you know. That's something that we've got to improve on. And I'm here today representing the American Association for Agricultural Education, also the Council of Administrators in Family and Consumer Sciences. I had the privilege of wearing both of those hats and certainly support and acknowledge many of the good things that have been said here this morning, and I will confirm some of those in my talk as well. Huge proponent of education and extension, but the primary area that I want to share today is about social science research and its relation to agriculture. So, I think Dr. Perdue talked about grand challenges. It's something that we've heard Dr. Ramaswamy talk about, and I guess one of the things that I'm always reminded of is the concern that one of the reasons we have a lot of these grand challenges is simply the distance at which our population is becoming further removed from the farm, right? We have a huge population of people who are concerned about where their food comes from, but because they're so removed from the farm, they no longer have that innate trust of the agriculture system. And a big problem is when somebody has a position based on emotion, it's very difficult to show them enough science to change that position. And so, of course, there's a lot of these grand challenges, but that's where we find ourselves. I'm recommending that because of this wide spectrum of stakeholder perspectives, we need to have skillful interventions, okay, that get us to solutions for these challenges. We promote multidisciplinary scholarship, not the first time you've heard that today. Integrating the tripartite mission of the American agriculture system, the land-grant universities, USDA, the teaching, extension, and research mission that combines bench and social sciences. Yes, technological advancement is important, and you've heard some of that today, and it's necessary. Our top priority, though, is human capacity development. Human capacity development that's planned, integrated, and embedded in these NIFA research priorities, okay? These are essential to us getting to where we need to be. In a nutshell, we need to increase scientific-based knowledge. And y'all have heard some other examples about that today, obviously. Knowledge about food production and its relationship to all of the areas about which we're concerned: human health, economic well-being, social stability, energy production, environmental sustainability, rural communities, and all that involves. And so that would be what we encourage NIFA to focus on is human capacity development within all of these other areas. Thank you. Oh, wait, Megan, you said I could use everybody else's time that didn't, no. Anyway, any questions?
Can you talk a little bit more about your association, please?
Sure.
Yes, I'd like to-
I could talk about a couple. So the American Association for Agricultural Education is made up of professionals in agricultural education, extension education, agricultural communications, community development, and so that's the group, that's the overall group. The reason I'm here today comes from a group of administrators in agricultural education that are part of the North Central Advisory Committee, NCAC 24, and I'm pleased to be an officer in that group. And so we had somebody there at Kansas City last week, and we'll have someone in Sacramento and DC in upcoming weeks. Yeah, yeah. I would also say I represent the Council of Administrators of Family Consumer Sciences, which is a similar group of people who are administrators at the university level in human sciences, human ecology, family consumer sciences, whatever you want to call those programs nowadays. So.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Newman. One point that you made that struck me was the importance of science communication. So as you point out how folks are getting further and further away from agriculture and from where their food, fiber, and other things come from, what emphasis on science communication, what do we need to be doing? I don't mean you or I, but the system. And then from a university point of view, what are you doing at your university and across the system to focus on the importance of science communication?
No, that's a great question. Thank you for allowing me to elaborate a little bit. The science communication aspect, like I said, when you deal with people's and they have emotional attachments to some idea, then one of the things you have to be very careful about is how you construct your messages and what points need to be made to help people understand where we're coming from in agriculture, natural resources, food systems. There are some neat things going on at universities right now dealing with that. And I want to say Bill Hubbard maybe and Dale was here earlier, and they were talking about how do you get people who have smartphones, they have a Google, they sort of think they know everything, right? But they get their information from somebody who has some hidden agenda about which they're unaware. And so as we start looking at those messages, the research has to be about how you deliver those messages. You know, as a quick example, in ag communications, they have some retina scanners that judge people's sort of visceral reactions to messages. You know, not what they want to tell you, not what they want to tell you they felt about that message, but what they actually felt about it as they were watching it. And so those are the kind of things that we need to get together and accomplish. Sure. Sure. All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of our scheduled program. But as you know, we have more time. We're here to listen as long as you want to speak to us rather. Wonderful. We have a couple additional comments from the audience. Fabulous. So why don't you just come up here, and as folks are finishing their statements, the next speaker can come up, and we'll keep the day going. Thank you.
I was afraid Dr. Qureshi was going to call on me anyway. So my name is Charles Hall. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. And I want to, first of all, thank NIFA for having this listening session here in Georgia, and we appreciate the opportunity to be here and be here. I listened with great interest with all the comments and things that were being said and talked about here. for our growers, our fruit and vegetable growers in Georgia, research is the lifeblood of our farms. And being able to take research that's generated through grants and programs of NIFA back to the farm and applying that at the farm level is very, very important for food and agriculture production. But as I listened today, I heard everyone talking about new programs, expanded programs, things that we can do, and all that costs money. And Dean Perdue's, I've never heard it quite put the way Dean Perdue put it, was comparing agricultural production to the medical and health industry of the U.S. And as I sat there this morning, I looked back in the very interesting program that NIFA put together. If I added this together, this is a $1.4 billion program. And it may be a little off, but I did a Google on the National Institute of Health, and that's a $32 billion program. And so that kind of goes to show the difference between what we have in agriculture and food production and what we have in the medical field. And nothing against the medical field, we all want to be healthy. But we have an opportunity in the next 6 months to help affect what's going on in Washington, and that's called the Farm Bill. And right now, we're fighting to maintain just what we have. We're not, we're fighting, we want to see that increase. So as citizens, I know some of you are governed by your jobs and you can't go and quote lobby, but you can educate. You can go to your congressman, you can go to your legislative aides that work with the congressman and make them aware of what we're doing within agriculture and what we're doing in research. Because if we don't get to that $32 billion level of those kind of grant programs, we'll always be on the back end of trying to get ahead within our grants and within our agricultural research. So keep going and keep working and keep moving on. So I want to say that.
Hey y'all, my name's Billy Mitchell, out of Atlanta. I work at a group called Global Growers. I'm a little unprepared, and I was laying sod this morning, so sorry I was late. But as sitting here, I just wanted to talk about, we're a NIFA-funded program this year, and it's just cool being in this room. So we work with Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. We work with Fort Valley University. We work with UGA. We work with the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. Trish Tripp is the best. And we work with a bunch of buyers in Georgia, like Peach Dish, Common Market Georgia, the Community Farmers Market Association. We've sat down with Whole Foods. And all our work is around food safety education with a focus on small and medium-sized growers. And for me, I think food safety is real cool for a bunch of reasons. But you get people talking about growing safe food, and then you get them talking about where they can sell the food. And so we have a safer food supply, but then we're also increasing opportunities for sales for the smaller and medium-sized farmers. And the biggest hurdle for us is there's all this incredible research, but it's confusing. I go online, I read about sanitizing wash sinks, or I read about keeping produce at proper temperatures, and this is like my life. I love it, and I'm super confused all the time. And a lot of our funding this year is taking these concepts and bringing them to a level that the small and medium-sized farms can understand, but they can also afford to implement. Because if you have all this education, but you can't do anything with it, what's the point? And so we just really want to encourage NIFA to continue to fund this work where we can go to the small, medium-sized farms, the farmers that don't know about these listening sessions, the farmers that are in the rural areas, they might not have internet, or they can't afford like a 3-compartment stainless steel sink, but they could build a food-safe sink out of a 50-gallon food-grade barrel. We want to teach them that these concepts are accessible to them. And we also just want to keep strengthening those small farms, because this is no secret that the small and medium-sized farms are disappearing. And we want food safety to be a tool that they can use to continue to sell and grow, and not a barrier that makes them get out of growing and selling vegetables. So that's all I got.
How do you reach those communities that don't have internet?
Well, we're very lucky. So everybody knows how like busy Extension is, or Georgia Fruit and Veg. But my funding is to go out and meet farmers. So I get in my little 95 Nissan red truck, and we just drive and we ask everybody who they know, who we should visit, and then we go and we visit them. And sometimes it's a little dicey just showing up on somebody's farm, but I used to be a farmer. I feel like I'm not very threatening, and dogs like me a lot. So when we get there, we just talk, and I'm just very lucky to have grown vegetables and managed small farms for about 8 years, and so just building that rapport with those growers. And last year, for the sake of overusing a metaphor, was very much planting seeds with people, and letting them know that they could trust us, and we're not there to catch them doing something wrong, but celebrate what they're doing well and help the growers teach other growers their best practices. I don't know if that answered your question. Sorry. Okay.
What recommendations would you have for the current extension infrastructure? You mentioned they're really busy, and it'd be great to replicate what you do in other parts of the South or country. But I think working in partnership with the universities, as you mentioned, would be great. But I worry that your concern is that extension is kind of reaching their capacity to be able to help with these kinds of things. I think.
I mean, that's definitely a concern of mine. You know, extension has the passion, the knowledge, and the resources, but I feel that they're stretched real thin. So something that Charles touched on is just funding for these programs so that extension agents can spend less time in the office and more time on the farm. I wish that there was an easier solution, or maybe money is the easiest solution, but all the extension agents that we work with are so thankful that we're able to take their knowledge and take their connections and spend time on the farm with the farmers. Because, I mean, you know, we talk to these guys like Josh Futter out of Cherokee County, and he loves GAPS education. He loves small farms. He started an urban farm, but he spends a lot of his time getting picture texts from people in his county being like, what's this bug in my house? You know, and just like extension is just expected to do so much with so little, and they do an amazing job with it.
Do you ever work with the Master Gardener programs, or is there a potential for a Master Food Safety program where extension could work with university research, extension, and teaching faculty to create a volunteer program to train others like you?
Yeah,
an idea.
I've never thought of that, but I think that's an incredible idea, because growers are very interested in food safety, and then buyers are very interested. You know, school districts want to know that they're getting safe food for their kids. Groups like Peach Dish, which is this meal kit company out of Atlanta that is just really helping the small farm community thrive. They want to know that things are food safe. And so having people that can go out and assist with that education would be incredible. And people just like to talk, like me, so they want to be out there and help. Cool. Thanks, y'all.
All right. It looks like we have a few more interested folks. So, okay. Can I get you the mic so folks that are streaming can hear this?
So along the issue of funding, has NIFA considered partnering with NIH? At the University of Kentucky, one trend that we've noticed is that our agriculture faculty, some of them are getting awards from NIH, and it's, you know, people in pathology, people in entomology, and I just wondered, you know, there are a lot of collaborative, NSF, NIH. Has NIFA explored that at all?
So the question is if NIFA considering or has considered partnering with other federal agencies, particularly National Institute of Health. And the answer is absolutely. Obviously, both agencies have their very specific missions. NIFA's mission, as you know, is sort of our center of gravity is production agriculture, as opposed to National Institute of Health, which is most human health and public health. However, there is no question there is a nexus between these two agencies in terms of some convergence in some programs. One Health was mentioned, for example. One Health is animal health and human health all mixed together. NIFA has quite a few programs where we actually have collaboration. There's a program, for example, and I might miss, I'm sorry? Right. There's a dual function, dual purpose, dual use, where after the genome sequences, for example, were developed to a level where we can truly call them as reference sequences, NIH and human medical research is actually using a lot of animals for their disease models, and we actually have a program where we provide funding to that type of collaboration, and that's just one example. In addition to NSF, NIH, we have several partnerships with NSF. There's a recent program, not quite recent, Evolution and Ecology of Infectious Diseases, for example, where we're mostly interested in the disease aspect, whereas NSF and other agencies are more interested in the fundamental ecology of the microbes or pathogens. So it's a great marriage of evolution and ecology of infectious diseases type programs. So answer is absolutely yes. We are also collaborating with our federal partners through our federal STEM strategic plan, for example, where we are looking at K through 20 pipeline, and NIFA, as part of USDA, is actually in each of these working groups where we have K through 12 working group, we have an undergraduate working group, we have a graduate program working group, I think we have a diversity and inclusion working group. So NIFA is actually a lot more active than you probably would know in how to sort of be a player in the common vision of education and workforce development also at the federal level. Yes, points earlier, if you look at the comparison between NIFA's budget line, 1.5 billion versus NIH and others, certainly our primary priority is towards production agriculture. As I said, that's really our bread and butter, and we, I think, do a very good job in listening to you and sort of then framing our prioritization in terms of where NIFA ought to be spending based on what you want. But point well made. Anybody else who would want to come and provide some additional input? I think I see some legs moving. Come on up.
Hello again. My name is Lee Friedlander, and I'm the agriculture teacher, one of two, at Hickson High School. We are a school system with, I believe, 79 schools, about 44,000 students. And before the fall of 2011, we did not have a single ag program. Historically, we had some, but like many other vocational programs, they were pushed aside and they were forgotten because they ceased being relevant in a urban and suburban community. We say Hickson. Hickson is part of Chattanooga. We're not a big city. We're not a small city. But my kids are not farm kids. Most of my students have never grown their own food. They've never spent much time in production agriculture. And most of them truly will not go on to careers in production agriculture. That's not what I train them for. I train my students to be science literate and to be ag literate. It's a great job. It really is, and it's a job that I have a lot of fun. I think what makes, and I say this all the time, my job to be the best job in Hamilton County is that with my high school kids, sometimes for the first time in their life, they get to do something real, something with consequence. At the university, especially at the upper level undergraduate classes, and truly for graduate students pursuing master's and PhD level degrees, they are doing real research They are answering questions that matter. They can see a connection. They are personally invested in their work. And I worry so much of what we do in middle school, elementary schools, and high schools. It's fabricated. It is, it's not real. In an agriculture classroom especially, we get to do things that are real, that matter. They get to see a connection between the knowledge, the skills, and the outcomes. Speaking about my coworker, Renee Parker, she trains health occupation students. Her students, when they leave our high school at 17 years old, are certified nursing assistants. They are certified by the state of Tennessee to go out, licensed by the state of Tennessee, to go out and work independently in healthcare fields. Now, the agriculture field does not have that. And I don't know if we ever will or ever quite should. It doesn't fit our model. But what I want to do is make sure that when my students leave my ag program or leave high school in general, whatever pathway they should choose, they come out science and agriculturally literate. I'm constantly looking for tie-ins to what is happening in the real world research. And as an ag teacher, that's tough. I am not a plant expert, although I pretend to be. I'm not a small animal expert, although I can fake it. Soil scientist, a little bit, but I'm far from the expert that many of the university professors can rightfully claim to be. I'm a jack of all trades, but to really dive into the scientific method, to really dive into processes and knowledge, you need some of that expert advice. So I think Ms. Perdue, in her call to action, I think what she really wanted to hammer home, and actually I know this because we helped prepare it together, was the need for collaboration and partnerships, not just collaboration in the loose sense between land-grant universities and the schools, but very, very focused collaboration between researchers tackling specific questions and high schools doing one small part of it. And not just an activity in a chemistry lab where you burn some compound, you say, oh, look, green light, it must be this, and then it goes in the trash. Not producing some poster or some paper that you turn to the teacher, you get a grade back on, you're happy, you're sad, and it goes in the trash. What I'm looking for is the opportunity to show my students that what they're learning and what they are doing is real, and that they can extend this into the real world, whether it's an academic pursuit or a career pursuit. So I'm looking for relevancy. And if I can find that, then I think for my students, I'm doing them a really good service. So I hear what you all are doing at the universities. I hear the priorities you're talking about. And all I say is yes, yes, yes. I want that for my students. What I'm asking for is the help and the infrastructure and the funding, to be honest, to get them there. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the work that you do. I can't wait to see my students become a part of the big picture, real world stuff that you all spoke about, these priorities you guys spoke about. Thank you.
All right, these extra comments are really great. Any additional comments? Okay, well, I wanted to thank everyone on behalf of NIFA for coming out today. These listening sessions are one part of a two-pronged initiative. You can still provide comment online. We have a stakeholder input form that is on our website, and I encourage you all to share those with your producers, your grassroots cooperators, all the small farmers, your colleagues at universities, so we can have as robust and as much input from our stakeholders as we move forward. Dr. Qureshi will finish up with a few closing comments, but I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out.
Well, thank you, Megan, and let me first thank my NIFA colleagues who really have put in a lot of time and energy and effort, and especially Megan, we could not have really done all these listening sessions and continue without Megan. So thank you so much, Megan, for doing all this. And also, our agency's sincere thanks to you all for taking the time and coming and sharing your fantastic ideas with us. That really was our intent, and I think we have been very, very successful. We have covered a huge territory today in terms of feedback, several areas, and I'm not going to list any. I've been taking notes. We are recording these, and these recordings would be available on NIFA website along with the presentations to you all to look at too. So where do we go from here? This is, as I said earlier, this is our second external stakeholder listening sessions and 2 more to go. We've already had our internal listening sessions from our internal program staff and program leadership. Once we have all these inputs in place, we are going to, believe me, read every single word and every single line of these inputs. And using both our own intellectual capital and capacity, along with certain text mining software, we hope to synthesize some of the leading themes or overarching themes which come out from these external as well as internal listening sessions. And our eventual hope is that we want to make sure that if our scientific emphasis areas or if our portfolio lacks some of these ideas which we get from you, we want to make sure that we insert those ideas into our programs. At the same time, we also want to make sure that we do our best to best align your ideas with the funding which we provide as a federal assistance agency to deliver our mission, which encompasses research, education, and extension/outreach. With that, I would say that you please be in touch with us through several portals. As I said, these presentations and the analysis will be available to you online through NIFA, and we will also continue to communicate with you through emails and all. So if no further comments, let me thank you on behalf of NIFA, on behalf of our senior leadership and at the department level, that we value what you do and you truly make a difference. So thank you and safe travels.